Hello, friends! Have you ever been famished after a long day of mining, and as you reach into your pocket, all you find is a warm, soggy eggplant? I've often brought along whatever I happen to have lying around to replenish energy after a day laboring around Stardew Valley, but have I really been bringing the most efficient foods to eat along the way? I've asked my team of scientists to crunch some numbers, and they've compiled a list of all the top energy efficient foods. If you find this interesting, please like and subscribe for more videos like this, and let me know if there are any other topics that you'd like to see as well. With that, let's get into it. There are a ton of things to eat in Stardew Valley, ranging from meals prepared in your kitchen to crops that you grow, or even random forage and raw fish. To find out what the most efficient foods are for energy and health, we've compiled a list of everything edible and compared their costs. That is, the base sell price for raw goods, or the maximum between the sell price and the cost of the materials for everything that are cooked or crafted. Of course, you could say there's an opportunity cost for things that can be processed into more expensive goods, but for simplicity, we're not going to make assumptions about what processing equipment you have access to or how far you've progressed in the game. Before we get started, there's a couple of general notes to make. This list is strictly the best foods for replenishing energy. You'll have to decide if these are worth it from a time or work invested standpoint on your own. Obviously, buying a seed and watering a flower for 6 days is a bigger investment than finding a fruit on the ground as you walk into town one day. Health restoration typically scales with roughly 1 health per 2.25 energy, so that list should be similar but not guaranteed. We're also not going to give preference for any food buffs you may get. In fact, you may be looking specifically for foods without stat bonuses to prevent overriding other buffs. In terms of energy efficiency, artisan goods through preserves jars, kegs, and dehydrators are almost always worse than what they were processed from. The amount of energy and health the items restore don't scale as well as the sell price. That's not always a bad thing if you have excess processing capacity, but if you're eating the processed artisan goods and selling unprocessed crops, it might be costing you gold. On the flip side of that, higher quality levels actually scale energy and health restoration more than the price, so it's an even better reason to set aside lower quality items for processing and saving the higher quality foods for eating or gifting. For this list, we'll be looking just at the normal quality to keep things simple, but it might be something to keep in mind. Alright, with that out of the way, let's start the list. At number 241, we have the void egg. Okay, we're not actually doing all 241, but I did want to point out that we included even the toxic edible items in the calculations. If you want the most efficient way to poison yourself or others around Stardew Valley, look no further than the void egg, which will deplete 1.42 energy per gold. Somehow, frying a void egg removes all of the toxins though. Anyway, on to the real list. Tied for number 20 with a score of 1 energy per gold, we have cranberry sauce, fried egg, lobster bisque, sashimi, and tortilla. The ingredients vary a lot between these, so take your pick depending on the season or recipe availability. I would like to note that sashimi probably has the lowest opportunity cost, since there are a lot of low-value fish that can go into this. The lobster bisque seems to also jump out as a potentially really good recipe when you're fishing, giving you +3 fishing and increasing max energy by 50. Lobsters don't exactly grow on trees though, so you'll probably have to make a conscious effort if you want to eat that regularly. Number 19. While the cactus fruit technically also restores 1 energy per gold, it has a little more upside as a raw food. It can be foraged in the desert or grown as a crop year-round in the greenhouse and Ginger Island. This means higher quality is possible and iridium quality is guaranteed on foraged cactus fruit if you have the botanist profession. An iridium cactus fruit gets up to 1.3 energy per gold, and I've fueled many skull cavern runs on whatever I can forage when I get in the desert. Number 18. The vegetable medley is a cooked dish with tomato and beet. The recipe is not profitable to sell, and given its relatively low-cost ingredients, that's saying a lot. You'll need 7 hearts with Caroline for her to send you the recipe, so it may be a little while before you get it. The near infinite scaling of beet processing in the mill could make the recipe a harder pill to swallow, but from a raw material standpoint, it's pretty solid. Number 17. The powder melon may not come as a big surprise if you've been playing since the release of Update 1.6. The new crops from that patch seem to have retuned values compared to most of the original crops. Maybe that's intentional since they are generally a bit more rare with seeds that can't be purchased from the store like other seasonal crops. At 1.05 energy per gold, these are pretty cheap energy and might be a little extra worthwhile since there's not a lot of competition for winter crop space. Number 16. Cave carrots aren't exactly packed with energy, but their low value is enough that you end up with an energy ratio of 1.2. They don't have a ton of other uses either, so you don't have to feel too guilty about eating them as you're mining. They are somewhat limited to what you can find though, so you may want to set a few aside for quests or some other cooking recipes. Number 15 and number 14. We have a two-way tie for number 14, and it's one of the odd cases where an artisan product competes with the raw form. Roe and aged roe both have predetermined levels of energy restoration that are dependent on the type of roe used. This can be really good or really bad. For example, eating really cheap roe like periwinkle will get you the same 50 energy as crimson fish roe. Most roe will not be worth eating, and periwinkle fish ponds on the farm are not super common, but in the best case scenario, roe and aged roe can get as high as 1.25 energy per gold. Number 13. Roots platter is a cooking recipe that requires cave carrot and winter root. The ingredients aren't super valuable, so that's good for the energy ratio, but the ingredients are also not something that you can conveniently or efficiently farm up either. The +3 attack buff is pretty good for how cheap the recipe is, but again, if you're worried about overwriting other better bonuses, this one might be a no-no. Number 12. Blackberries can be foraged in fall on the ground or from berry bushes from fall 8 to fall 11. They're a solid and abundant energy source in your first year in Stardew Valley. Unfortunately, or maybe not unfortunately for your gold supplies, the value of blackberries can increase by 3 times after learning the Bear's Knowledge power, which will become accessible after you find a certain secret note. The energy value doesn't increase though, so once this happens, these will fall hard out of the top 20 and won't even make the top 100. Number 11. The bean hot pot is a cooking recipe that requires 2 green beans. This is a really great recipe, turning a not great vegetable into one of the best foods. It's also profitable using normal quality beans, meaning it's a time-efficient way to pseudo-process green beans for more money. It gives you a boost of 30 max energy and 32 magnetism, so if you're not worried about overriding other buffs, you get a nice little bonus. The only downside? You have to get Clint up to 7 hearts for him to give you this recipe, so you might have to treat him a little nicer than you normally would. Number 10. Chowder is another cooking recipe that you can get from Willy at 3 hearts. This requires 1 clam and 1 milk. It will give you a long-lasting +1 fishing buff, which may or may not be helpful depending on what you're up to. At 225 energy, it's a pretty big lump sum, so while it can be really gold efficient, you may leave some energy on the table if you don't have a plan to use it all by the end of the day. Number 9. Shrimp Cocktail is kind of the next step up from Chowder. It has similar energy efficiency, but adds +1 luck bonus to the mix. This is learned at the very end of Year 2 from the Queen of Sauce show, so that may be its biggest downfall. At number 8, we get back to another crop with the summer squash. Like the rest of the 1.6 crops, it restores higher energy than typical. The fact that it is also a multi-harvest crop makes it a really good economical source of reoccurring food during the summer. You can really stock up on these, even with the somewhat limited nature of the 1.6 seeds. Number 7. Next up, we have the field snack, which takes an acorn, maple seed, and pine cone to make. Unlike the other cooking recipes, this is actually a crafting recipe, so you can make it without a kitchen or cooking fire. That, along with becoming available at level 1 foraging, makes this a really good energy-efficient snack that's available really early in the game. Despite that, I'm really hesitant to craft these, especially since update 1.6 and the release of Mystic Trees through Foraging Mastery. Using up too many acorns or maple seeds early in the game instead of propagating more trees could cost you later on when you come up short crafting Mystic Tree seeds. In the number 6 spot, we have the tulip. I knew tulips were pretty good for energy, but when you put the numbers behind everything, I was pleasantly surprised to see just how high on the list they are. Now I know why my mom always used to make us eat out of the neighbor's flower garden as kids. At 1.5 energy per gold, they are a really cheap, scalable way to get energy in the spring. They are otherwise not a great crop for profits or farming experience, and the different color shades could make them a nightmare to stack in your inventory. But there is something unique and interesting about eating flowers as one of the most energy efficient foods in the game. The spring onion comes in at number 5. They can be foraged in the cindersap forest in the spring, and they're super low energy per onion, but even lower value, which gives them 1.6 energy per gold. At only 13 energy per onion, you may need to eat a bunch of these at a time to refill a decent amount of energy. That can get tedious unless you're trying to impress other villagers with your appetite. Like the blackberry, this will fall all the way out of the top 100 after you've gotten Spring Onion Mastery from Jazz and Vincent, which boosts their value to 5 times. That requires 8 hearts with both of them, so you may have a little time before they become completely obsolete as food. Escargot is the highest ranking cooking recipe at number 4 overall. It takes 1 snail and 1 garlic. Both of these are pretty inexpensive, but it will make it largely inaccessible until year 2 when garlic seeds can be bought from Pierre. You will also need to be at 5 hearts with Willy. It gives 225 energy, which equates to 1.8 energy per gold. It also gives pretty long duration +2 to fishing, so it makes for a good snack for a long day of fishing. Number 3. Well, it wouldn't be a list without hops in the top 10. Not only are hops super efficient per gold, but as a multi-harvest crop, they'll regrow every day, giving you tons of reoccurring food throughout summer. The biggest downside to hops is how good they are in other ways. As a raw crop, they're super efficient, but when you compare the alternative uses for hops, it might be hard to justify eating a lot of these. If you have kegs, making pale ale from hops is one of the best moneymakers in the game, so eating your 25 gold hops could be costing you 420 gold of lost pale ale revenue per bite. Yikes! In the number 2 spot, we have the carrot, which is another new crop from 1.6. It's a pretty low value crop that has a base growth time of 3 days, so you wouldn't really expect it to be a super high energy food, but its 75 base energy recovery puts it at 2.14 energy per gold. The limited seed availability is really its main downfall. And in the number 1 spot for most energy efficient food, we have the salmonberry. Salmonberry season comes from spring 15 to spring 18, where you can harvest them from berry bushes. This means you can really stock up on these each spring. Even though they only give 25 energy per berry, they're so ridiculously cheap that they have an energy to gold ratio of 5. With the botanist profession, this jumps up to 6.5 energy per gold. This blows everything else away, and it is so far ahead that even after getting 3-fold value increase from the bear's knowledge power, salmonberries would still only drop down to the number 4 spot. Crazy, right? There are way more food items that can fit on this list, so I thought we could lay out the best from each category, kinda to give you an idea of what the typical ranges look like. I've got a couple of takeaways from all of this, so let's see if you agree with them. Most fish are surprisingly bad for energy. I know it makes sense to eat them sometimes, but I was expecting more of them. There's some really atrocious cooking recipes too, with so many of them being strictly worse than the sum of their parts. Artisan goods are generally disappointing too. With all that time that goes into processing, you'd think that they would have more of an advantage. As always, I would love to hear what you guys think. Is there anything I missed, and do any of you try to optimize food to save money? I'd also like to give a big thanks to the scientists for tabulating all of the Stardew edibles and their ingredients. If you made it to the end, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video or learned something new, please give it a like and subscribe, or come say hello to me on Twitch. Until next time, goodbye!